All right, well, welcome to the last session. My name's Steve Terelmes. I am your Expium presenter today. So I know as you guys have all been looking at the presenters all day long, you've been looking at the screen behind us saying, what is this Expium? We're hearing from Google, we're hearing from Oasis Digital. Who are the Expium people? So I guess, well, hopefully they saved the best for last, right? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about tools that we use for helping folks manage their governance and their governance platforms. So obviously we've talked a lot about governance today, and there's two sides to governance, right? There's the management of the governance, and then there's the involvement in the governance. And so hopefully what I can demonstrate to you guys today are some avenues that might work for you in your company along the lines of the managing for the governance. And in particular, having a level of excitement and a level of participation among the broader masses in your organization versus having them feel that governance is something that is being dictated down to them, something that is managed best by them sending an email to somebody upon which they have to sit around and wait 2 or 3 weeks before they hear anything back, or something like that. So let's jump right in. And if anybody has any questions about the presentation, just raise your hand, or if I don't see your hand, throw something at me. All right, here we go. So this is kind of the way we approach governance. Now, Expium is more of a consulting type company than a software company. We are a platinum partner for Atlassian, so we bring to bear upon the Atlassian environment best practices, good governance, how to structure your Atlassian environment in a way that's going to be scalable, in a way that's going to create the most success for you and your company. So when we look at companies, when we talk to companies, we're really trying to focus on using the tools to support what that company does best. So what are some of those things? Well, obviously we want to align strategies. We want people to understand what the value chains are in the company, what the strategies are in the company, what the products are in the company, what is it that makes our company successful, and we want them to understand that as a whole. We want that to be aligned. Also, we want the opportunity to improve processes. Now, we don't just want the improvement in processes to be things like, hey, there's somebody here that wants to improve in process, so he's going to inject into some sort of order an amount of chaos and nobody really knows where it's coming from or why it's coming in. No, we want the improvement of process to actually live within the best possible way for change control within the governance process as well. And then also providing efficiency. How can we do things better, faster, automated, more quickly, and that sort of thing. So all of these and many other things that we could probably think about are kind of what makes our companies great. This is the rocket that our company is. This allows our company to get from the ground level to the moon or wherever it is we want to go as a company. However, if we think about the concept or the analogy of a rocket, we know that a rocket is not going to do very well without a control tower, right? Without Houston being there helping it and guide it to its destination. So we want to enable the rocket. We want to keep the rocket maximizing and efficient and firing on all cylinders, but we still need the control tower. So what are the structures that undergird the control tower in this governance environment that makes that possible and successful? So I came up with a cute little acronym, and hopefully it helps us remember these things. But a lot of what are in this acronym are actually things that we've been already talking about all day long. So representation, right? Who is involved in your governance process? Again, not just a handful of people that are isolated off to the side. We want our governance representation to be across the entire company. Openness. How do people find out about governance? How do people learn what your policies are? If somebody actually wants to participate in the governance process, how do they become a part of the governing bodies? We want that to be very open so that people can easily see that and identify it without having to ask 100 people or send an email off to somebody that they don't even know. Coordination. How do we actually take this concept of governance, this is really like a universal enterprise concept, and how do we coordinate it across multiple teams, especially with really large organizations, right? How do we actually build that framework so that as we grow to a large organization, it's scalable? Knowledge. Knowledge is super important because everybody in your business has some sort of contribution that they can make to the bigger picture. So how do we extract that knowledge out? How do we encourage people to bring that knowledge out into the open so that it can be reviewed and adjusted and updated and coordinated and collaborated with everyone else? And then expertise, the capabilities that a lot of people have in the company through the experiences they have. We deal with this a lot at Expium. We're a small company, but we still struggle with expertise, not because our consultants are not experts at what they do, but because they're very much experts at what they do, and they're very busy because they are experts. As a result, this consultant's over here for 2 or 3 weeks, this consultant's over here, and this consultant's over here, and they're all learning and building and helping companies out do different things, but they're not learning from each other, because they're too busy off doing their real job, right? So how do we bring that expertise back into the company so that the sum can be greater than the parts? Okay, and then finally, of course, teamwork. Everybody likes the idea of teamwork, but really, what can we do in our governance process to encourage teamwork, right? So these are all grand and noble concepts, and I could sit up here and continue to wax eloquent about it. But what we really want is we want something that can actually manage and facilitate these concepts for us. And so when we look at it, we want a tool. We want a tool that is going to be able to do all of these things. We want a tool that's going to be able to identify and manage and help people understand who the governing bodies are in our organization, what the policies are, what are some of the products that exist under the governance, and how can we affect those products. We're all operating in large and multifaceted and multi-connected software environments. There's a lot of features and products that we might want to bring into those environments, and how do we control and manage and motivate the introduction of that across the platform. Standard practices, what practices need to be standard versus flexible, and where's the line drawn for each team on that. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, knowledge sharing. And all of this is really tying into a bigger picture of having all of this be openly visible to everyone. So that's the content side of governance, right? That is going to be the actual documents, the actual policies, the actual information sharing and content around governance. But on the other side of the equation, you also have actions. Governance is not a static process. It shouldn't be a static process. It should be a very dynamic process, and one that is dynamic in a controlled fashion and dynamic in a grassroots fashion. So how do we do that with the actions around governance? Well, first of all, we need to be able to identify and visualize policy changes when they are happening, and actually allow people across the entire organization to see the life cycle of the policy change while it's happening, so that they know about it, they can actually affect conversation around that policy change, and this isn't something they find out about a month after the governing bodies have established the policy changes. Requests for products and add-ons. How do people inject requests? You're dealing with multiple teams. In some cases, like the tools that we work with at Alaskan, you may have tens of thousands of users. One user in one team may have a fantastic idea about an add-on or about some sort of scripted content that they want to bring into the environment. How is he going to be empowered to bring that into the broader organization? Procurement of products. What's the process there? How long does it take? Do people understand once their product has been approved for acquisition? Do they understand where in the process that product is? System requests. Hey, I'm working with a customer right now that does not have a dev system. They just ramped up their entire platform, and now they don't have a dev system. So this is a critical governance process. How do we get that dev system in place, and who's involved in that, and who are the decision makers when we build that out? And then governance events. What happens if we have a violation in policy? What happens if we have some sort of knowledge sharing opportunity in the governance environment, and how does that managed? All of this, again, the actions need to be openly visible as well, right? So we want this paradigm where we have all of these things happening simultaneously, content and actions, and they're all open. Okay, so this is a pretty tall order, right? And so what we have found is that a good way to do this is to actually start to implement into a corporation or an enterprise a platform that is going to allow you to do all of these things. So what is it that we have done to accomplish that? So that's basically the end of my slides, and so now I'm going to jump over to the actual case study. But before I do that, are there any questions so far on that? questions or comments? Okay. Okay, so we have two main products. Yeah, thank you. Some of these slides or some of these screens that I'm going to be showing are big and some are small, so I might have to adjust my zoom to make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so we have two main products in Atlassian that are fantastic for governance because our governance solution has to include the management and open sourcing of actions and content. So, of course, the actions one is going to be JIRA. That's what JIRA is. JIRA tracks projects and actions that need to happen in that project. If you're not familiar with JIRA, just know that JIRA is a tool that tracks anything you need to get done. And it does it within teams and within products and projects. And then on the content side, we have Confluence. Confluence is a content repository, a content portal. It's not just an opportunity to capture documents, it's an opportunity to share those documents and to reference those documents both among your organization and also with its sister product, JIRA. So there's a lot of collaboration that can happen between Confluence and JIRA. So let's start off on the action side. We've got a lot of actions that we want to manage in our governance process. So the first place we're going to go to is some sort of overview board that's going to give us an idea of what's been happening in the governance world. This is just an example of a couple of gadgets on a JIRA dashboard that are going to track different activities that can be seen in governance. So you've got an idea of different issues that have been created within the governance project, and I'll talk in more detail about what some of these issues can be, but these are going to be things like, hey, I need to purchase an add-on, or hey, I want to nominate Bob to be on the Atlassian steering committee, or hey, we need to build a dev environment. So these are all actions that need to happen, and so we've got a platform here kind of giving an overview of what those actions are and who they're assigned to. Down here at in the bottom of the dashboard, we actually have a similar overview. This is just going to be a list of the more recent actions that have happened. Over here on the left-hand side, we've got different actions that are happening here and where they stand in their own processes. Because this is JIRA, we can actually take a look at any of these. And so I could go in here and say maybe click on this guy here and open it up. And now I can see a list of what's happening with these and different information about it. And if I want to drill into any one of them, I can actually just click on it and drill into it. Now, the magic of this is, the biggest magical part of this is that this governance project is open visibility to anybody. If you are one of the 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 users in JIRA, you have access to see this project. So this dashboard that we're looking at is available for anybody who we want to see. Another dashboard might be just a simple high-level overview in maybe a pie format of the different activities that are happening in our Confluence environment, or in our governance environment. But JIRA gives us this opportunity to expose all this out there for people because, again, governance is not going to be successful unless it's motivated on the grassroots level. If the users in your organization that are using your software solutions are not motivated by the fact that they can't see what's happening in the governance or can't participate in what's happening in the governance, then they're at best they're going to be confused, and at worst they're going to be openly hostile toward the governance structures and policies that you're trying to put in place. So if we're going through the actions still around governance, how do we actually want to manage that? Well, we're going to manage that in a JIRA project. And in that JIRA project, we are going to isolate the needs that have to happen in a governance structure. Now, I've got a handful of these up here that I'll show you guys, but this is an open platform, so if there are other what's that need to be done in governance, they can simply be built into this project, and we can continue to capture these as we need to. So, for example, the first one I have up here is this one that I mentioned earlier. There's a need to implement a dev platform. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that somebody wanted to implement a dev platform, and this is probably an issue that's a broad issue, right? This isn't one person that said, hey, I need a dev platform. No, we probably have established this as a governing body. So what happens is someone will go out and create an issue in the JIRA project, and that issue will, if you're familiar with JIRA, you understand that for every what in JIRA, as in what issue are you trying to solve, there is a how in JIRA, as in how is that issue going to be solved. So let me Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit more so you guys can see that. So here's an example of, and of course, JIRA doesn't like it when I do that, but here's an example of how this particular issue could be solved. For example, there's going to be a need for research. What kind of dev platform do we have? Are we on AWS? Are we on Microsoft Azure? Are we actually using a Atlassian platform? What is the platform we're using? And we need to research around that, gather interest, and then we need to present that to the governing body or something to that effect. So this will go through a life cycle that can, again, be openly tracked and viewed by not only the governing bodies, but the entire organization as a whole. Let me get rid of this guy. I'll try to get rid of it. There we go. Another thing that might happen is we have a situation where we've got different governing bodies, and I'll talk about concept of governing bodies in a second, but we have this governing body process, and every now and then we're going to have an absence in a particular role in a governing body. So we need to introduce a person to replace or fill that void, right? So again, we want our users engaged in this. We don't want them to just find out through an announcement, hey, guess what? You know, Josh or Bob or Brian is now our new representative for your team. Why not use this as an opportunity to engage users on the grassroots level? And so send out an announcement to people. We need a new person on our steering committee, or we need a new person on our product admin group. Submit nominations. And so somebody comes along and submits a nomination for a particular person for the Atlassian systems admin group. And then other people can actually come in and vote on that if they want to say, yeah, I like Brian. I think he'd be a great representative for us on our governing body. Now you actually have users that are out there and they're now actively engaged in your governing process. And of course, this too, being a JIRA ticket, has its own life cycle as well. And it can be tracked by the users. They can see when the voting period is, when the nomination period is, and even after a particular person has been appointed. So other things too, like what if you have a large organization of users and one out of thousands wants to create or purchase a new add-on? We are operating environments now of collaborative software. So just in the Atlassian environment, there's over 3,000 add-ons that exist. It's a lot of add-ons for a governing body to try to manage on their own. So what if we just, instead of having the governing body manage that, we empowered our users to manage that by going out and creating an opportunity to create a governance ticket around an add-on that they want to purchase. So one user in one small team in one fairly large division across tens of thousands of users is doing some research one day and finds a new product, in the case of this one, Reveal for Confluence, and they decide that this would be a fantastic product for us. And so what can he do about that? Well, in a normal environment, he is probably going to talk to somebody in his team, and then maybe he might put an email out. He may not even know who to send that email to. You know, we've got a governing body, and I know for a fact that I can't purchase any add-ons on my own, so I've got to send an email to some guy that I've never even seen before or ever talked to and try to explain to him in this email about Reveal for Confluence so that he can get that email from me, whom he's never seen or talked to, and actually take time out of his busy day to read through that email and then promptly let it park in his inbox, and I probably won't hear anything for weeks. What if instead the user is able to actually just go and create a ticket directly into the governance project himself? Then once the user does that, he can actually start to talk to people in his organization about this add-on. I like this add-on. This is why I like this add-on. This is why I think it would be good for you. And people in his team start to find out about this add-on, and they then go out to this issue and start voting on it. As word spreads, more and more people start voting on this issue. Completely grassroots, completely user motivated, right? Eventually, it's going to get to a point where it has some sort of critical mass and it gets to the attention of the governing bodies, or the user who has created the issue can say, hey, I know we've got several thousand users in our Atlassian environment, but you know, now we have about 100 or 200 people that have voted on this. I wonder if I can bring this up to the next Atlassian product admin group meeting for a vote. And so he can then present this to the governing body and say, hey, I think this is a great idea. By the way, I'm not just coming to you by myself. I actually represent these 200 people that have voted for this issue as well. And then the governing body decides to actually purchase this product. And then the cool thing about it, because we can do nested workflows in JIRA, is that once the governing body decides to purchase the product, this particular issue winds up waiting and sitting on hold while another issue, which is an actual purchase issue, let's see here. Here we go. This is a different one, but another issue, which is a purchasing issue, winds up being created for that add-on, and then the governing body and others that we want to be able to see this can track and view the purchase of this product. And then we can connect and link those two issues together because this is JIRA, and JIRA allows us to do this. So people can actually see how the purchasing process is being done and when it's actually been closed and purchased. And then once it's purchased, the governing body will go back to the person who initiated the request for the add-on and say, hey, guess what? This has now been purchased. Guess who's going to help us implement this add-on? Guess who's going to help us create the documentation around this add-on, which, by the way, is now going to go into our governance content process as well, so that in the future, anybody that comes into our environment, that's new to our environment and sees this add-on, can then go and find the public comment and documentation around it and actually read what they need to read about this new add-on as it's being implemented. Another great element of this process is that it has a history and a certain perpetuity to it. For example, if this particular product, for whatever reason, we decide we're not going to purchase this, we're going to put it on hold, it can go park on hold for any period of time, and then 6 months later, if another person in a completely different part of the organization decides that they'd be interested in this product, they can just do a quick filter in JIRA to find if this product has ever been created for a governance discussion before. And sure enough, they'll find this product. They'll see that it's on hold. They can sit down and review the entire history of the product, all the comments around the product. And at that point in time, they're already fully educated on a product. Whereas without this environment, they don't even know that this product was considered or discussed or even presented to the governing body 6 months ago. So this is kind of how Atlassian's JIRA platform can actually help us to track all of the open actions that we need to do around all of those governance processes that we've been talking about all day long, and actually motivate users to participate in this, to get involved in this, to submit requests on this, and also to be able to monitor and track requests, build reports around the different governing activities that are happening throughout that process. Okay, so that's the action side of the world, right? This is, hey, something needs to be done, and so we need to track that. What about the other side of the world? What about the documentation? What about the content? All of this great stuff we've been talking about today and other things. How do we capture that? How do we make that available for users to see at any single point in time? Well, when we're talking about the documentation content side of the world, then Atlassian helps us out with Confluence. So let's go now over to the Confluence side of the world. So we now have an opportunity in Confluence to create a platform for all of our governance information. So if you're not familiar with Confluence, Confluence is organized into spaces, kind of like JIRA is organized into projects, and pages live on spaces in Confluence, just like issues live in projects in JIRA. And so in Confluence, we will create a space, and it will be an open space platform across our entire organization. Now, this does two things. First of all, it makes sure that if anybody has any questions around governance, it is obvious where to go. There's a governance space out there. Everybody can see it. Go to the governance space. The second thing this does is if somebody actually wants to do something around governance documentation. Hey, I want to build a best practice document. I want to build a how-to article. I want to, one of my policy requests that I submitted to the governing body got approved. So now I need to capture the documentation around that policy. The second thing that this space does is it makes sure that all of that content doesn't wind up drifting off into other places around the organization and is all focused in one area as well. So once this has been implemented and once users are familiar with it, we can rest kind of with a certain amount of safety that in this space is going to be where we're going to find all of our governance stuff. And there isn't policies floating out there that I'm not aware of because it's not anywhere here in this space. Okay, so what would the structure or some of the key content be within the Confluence space? Obviously, Confluence gives us a great opportunity to provide the overview page. So on the overview page, we're going to be letting people know what's the purpose of governance? Why do we do this crazy thing called governance, right? And we're going to kind of summarize that down to our key salient points, like we want to have good scalable growth. We want to have good open knowledge sharing. We want to have an opportunity for users to be involved and things like that. And so that'll all be on your homepage. Also on your homepage will be maybe some key links to things that people need quick reference to. You may even have some links to blog articles that exist, either within your organization or out on the internet saying, hey, click here for some great articles on governance. And then somebody can go there and click on it, and they can go see some great articles on governance. Or you might say, click here for a really cool video or our latest video on governance, and they can click here and they can watch this forum or something like that about governance. Further on, you may actually have just some key visual representations of what governance looks like from a visual standpoint in your organization, some of the things that we actually showed today, as well as maybe other things like how-to articles and things like that. So this is going to be a landing page where anybody that may not be familiar with your governance process can come to and not only find good information, but also have an idea of where to go to find that information. Okay. So your governance documentation is going to need to cover some basic key things. You can have whatever you want out here, but there are some key things that are going to have to be covered on here. One is basically your governance structure. So if you are going to implement a governance process in your organization, it's going to be really important if you want your users to be motivated and your users to know what's going on and your users to participate in that governance process, for them to understand what the governance structure is. For example, who are the governing bodies that exist within our organization? This is a sample of a governing body structure that we help people build. Atlassian Steering Committee, which is going to be an oversight committee. Atlassian Product Admin Group, which is going to be responsible for managing all the products and all of the new add-ons and features that come in. And Atlassian Steering Admin Group, which is responsible for the platforms and for the user access. And the cool thing about this governing body is that we are going to motivate people to populate these governing bodies with not vice presidents or directors or high-level people, but with the actual users of the software. Now, obviously, in the places like maybe the steering committee or something like that, we would probably need to have somebody who can purchase things, and so there will be some directorial representation in there. But by and large, the people that live in these governing bodies are going to be the people that are represented in this little square down here at the bottom, your product managers, your product owners, your super users, and those kinds of guys. Because we really want folks to be engaged in governance, and so we are going to literally engage them in the governing process. So what is the Atlassian Steering Committee? Well, a user can come in here, they can read about the purpose and the structure of the Atlassian Steering Committee. They can actually look at the members of the Atlassian Steering Committee. Here's a situation where we have an open position in the Atlassian Steering Committee, and so Confluence is linking us directly to the JIRA ticket where we have nominations around that open process. And somebody can say, oh, I know John. I didn't realize he was running for the Atlassian Steering Committee. I'm going to go out there and vote on John, you know. Or, hey, I didn't realize the position was open. I think Bob would do a great job. I'm going to do that as well. And so the users, again, are completely empowered from a knowledge sharing standpoint. Also, in here you can have different meeting notes. So users can actually go and see what happened at the last steering committee. What decisions were made, what things were voted on, what things were purchased. They don't have to email members of the steering committee to ask them that. Also, one of the cool things about Confluence is you have the opportunity to organize content in different ways. So if they're in the steering committee process and looking at meeting notes, they can see meeting notes there. Or if they want to, they can actually quickly see all the meeting notes that the governing bodies have had over the last 6 months or so by just going to like a meeting notes log or something like that. So yeah, same thing with the product admin group. They're going to see who the members are of the product admin group, the system admin group. They're going to be able to see who those members are. Oh, look, there's an open position on the system admin group as well. Maybe if there's a decision log, things that have happened, that just key decisions that have been made either this month or this year and things like that. We could even give them a grid or a map that easily breaks down what responsibilities live within which governing bodies, right? You got 3 governing bodies and you got tons of Atlassian governance responsibilities. How do I know which body I should approach for questions and policies around that? Well, you can give them a grid or something that breaks that down for them. Also, the second thing that's going to be absolutely critical to include in your governing content section is going to be your policies and standards. This is actually going to be where people will go to find out if I want to do this, can I do that, or how should I do that, or something like that. You can organize this however you want in Confluence. We organize it by policies for administrators versus policies for users. So for example, policies for administrators might be things like, how do I archive a project? What if I want to build a project with my different database elements? How, what's the rules and policies around that? How do I manage something like integrations and different things like that? And then there might be also policies and standards for users as well, like how do I use permissions in portfolio? What is an issue hierarchy, and are we using issue hierarchies, and what's our standard issue hierarchy, and that sort of thing. And so these policies and standards are available for everyone to see and to even, because we're in Confluence, comment on at the bottom of each page. We can even have a list of policies that are currently in progress. So these are policies that are happening right now. They're being talked about in the steering committee or among users and things like that. And so our Confluence page gives us a nice list of what that is. And if anybody has a question on it or wants to connect with somebody or put in a comment, they can just click right into JIRA, pull up that ticket and do that. Another big area of your content management is going to be your how-to articles. So how-to articles are the #1 place where powerful content gets lost in an organization. Somebody has an experience with a customer or a product or an event, and through that they learn a tremendous amount of stuff. They get excited about it. They sit in their hotel room at night and write a big long article about it, and then they stick it in their personal drive and it gets lost and nobody else in the organization ever sees it. Why not already build a framework for people so that when that excitement happens, they not only know that they can draft that document, they know that there's a home for that document to go where that excitement can be shared with other people. Other people can review it, they can comment on it, and they can say, yeah, I actually experienced that with this client over here or this event over here. And so now you have collaborative documentation going on around how-to articles. How about also, these are just some other odds and ends, how about also an open visibility around your Atlassian governance journey? This is our history of Atlassian governance. When did we start using Atlassian? When did we build our Atlassian steering committee? When did we build our APAG and our ASAG? What were the different history of our products? So back a year ago, we started using JIRA with 200 users, and then in July of this year, we actually upgraded it to 500 users. And we picked up Confluence back in March of last year with 500 users. And we got milestones down here: JIRA go live, Confluence go live. Confluence go live here, governance go live. We migrated to Data Center here. This is like giving your users a very quick overview of the world of governance and the software product that this governance is managing in a snapshot so that they can see it really easily and be brought to speed very quickly. You can even have some documents down here that are telling your users some really key high-level stuff like importance of governance. Read this letter from Expium's president about why we do governance and what's so important about it. What were some of the deliverables that we finished in the first phase of governance and things like that? And so users can come in and review this and understand it a little bit better. So yeah, you can also actually help users make the connection between the content and the action by embedding into Confluence the connection pieces into the action items that are happening in JIRA as well. So this is not to say this is exactly the way your company needs to do it. It's just some ideas that hopefully start to generate the creative juices in your mind that you can maybe say, yeah, we like these ideas of governance. We really like the idea of scalable growth. We like the idea of change control. However, we don't really know a good way of visualizing that. We don't know a good way of motivating users from a grassroots level so that they feel like they're empowered and they feel like they're part of the governance process, not just kind of at the tail end of it, getting dragged around by whatever decisions are made that they knew nothing about. So Confluence and JIRA, two great tools to help build your visibility into governance. Any questions on that?